So we are speaking now to Jonathan Davis, who's an economist and a wealth manager. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us.
My great pleasure.
I'm very confused by this. I mean, either it is just panto season and, it's good and bad, goodies and baddies. Or is this not a little bit of the emperor's new clothes, which is the pretense that, well, there's all these bad debts, but it's all right. They've been ring-fenced, so they don't really exist. They are still there, aren't they?
Well, exactly. Look, over the 10 or 15 years up to the big crash of 2008, these banks were totally reckless in their lending. As a business or a household, if you could fog a mirror, they would lend you whatever you wanted to borrow. The problem is, eventually the piper has to be paid. Well, of course, we've got businesses and households up and down the country, and indeed across the world, to which they've loaned recklessly, which could never afford to pay back the money. So all of these banks, it's not just RBS, all of these banks have got hundreds of billions in their systems that they know they'll never get back. They lent it in the first place because they've got a thing called bonuses they've got to account for. Funny that. And shareholders' dividends and whatever, based on fallacies. But now we're at the stage where we're starting to have the piper paid. So, as you say, they're effectively hiding, I didn't know the number, okay, £38 billion. That's quite a lot of money. Do you know what? That's 80 NHS trust hospitals. Makes you think. They're hiding it, pretending it's not there. Maybe it'll go away. Of course it won't. It will stay there forever, gaining dust, gaining problems. Instead, why don't we rip the cancer out of the system? Why don't we stop bailing out these banks? And then you and I, the taxpayers, and indeed our children, because that's where we're borrowing money from, can stop bailing out these bankers today.
Well, you say stop bailing out the banks. The reality, of course, what happened in 2008 is we didn't bail out the banks. We bailed out our economies, because if the banks had gone under, they'd have taken all of the banks with them and our entire business and economy with it.
That's not a reality. That's a perception. Look, I've just been saying to a friend, so I'll say it. Look, we have a thing called capitalism, which actually we haven't had for decades. Capitalism without bankruptcy is like Christianity without hell. In other words, no, well, you may laugh.
I love it. I'm writing it down. I'm going to steal it off you.
There's no copyright. But if I can find a copyright lawyer who can put one on, I might talk to them. But seriously, if you continually bail out failed industries, we'll never get the economy going properly. You think the economy is going well at 1.5% growth, which all these politicians and bankers and central bankers have been trumpeting recently? Well, I'll tell you, put in perspective, we've got the lowest borrowing rates in history, and the government is borrowing £120 billion a year from our children, and that's only to get 1.5% growth. That is the dire state of the economy that you and the people in the media should be focusing on, instead of pretending that we should have bailed out the banks. No, we shouldn't have bailed out the banks. Oh. We should have let them go under, and then we would now be growing handsomely instead of feebly.
Oh, I have to say, no, I was putting the argument that we were told about bailing out the banks. I'm kind of with you on the day whether or not we should bail them out or not. Jonathan Davis, absolute pleasure to talk to you. I hope to speak to you again.